Hello my loves. In today's video, I will be showing you guys the process of an acrylic gouache piece that I did participating in another artist's Draw This in Your Style event. I'm actually not sure how to say her Instagram handle, so I'll just show it to you as well as the beautiful character she created up on the screen. And if you don't follow her already, I'll link her Instagram in the description as well as all the art supplies that I used in today's video. And to clear up some confusion, I originally intended to paint this piece with watercolors, but pretty quickly I decided that I just didn't like how the watercolors were laying on this paper, so I end up switching to acrylic gouache, as you'll see in a moment. And real quick, just in case you're not familiar, the hashtag Draw This in Your Style has been going around on Instagram for a while, and basically what it is that artists will create a character or illustration and invite other artists to recreate it. And since I have already divulged my acrylic gouache painting process in a previous video, I thought that for today it might be appropriate to discuss the ever so popular topic: how do you find your art style? Now, this video is not going to be a step-by-step sequence or anything like that, more of a discussion based on some of the questions that I received over in the community tab. And before we get into it, I would like to say that, of course, it is important to learn the fundamentals before you think about style. And when you do that, over time, your style will come naturally to you. But I do think that there's nothing wrong with exploring the possibilities of where your art can go beyond just studying the basics. So to begin, the first question I got was, what defines your art style? This definition might be a little bit different for everyone, but to me, it is the overall look and feel across all of your work, no matter the subject or the medium. Your art style is something that typically, if you were to put your artwork in a lineup with other people's, you could show it to someone and they could pick yours out from said lineup. And this may be due to a number of different elements, such as the way you shade, your quality of line work, how you define shapes, etc. And to use like a cliche example, things that I'd say define some of Vincent van Gogh's art style would be that he stylizes his subjects in a way that gives him a lot of movement and energy, and these qualities span across subject matters, whether it be plants, objects, or the night sky. And while I recognize not every single one of his pieces may contain those qualities all the time, the same could be said about you or me. And I'd like to think that discovering your art style is more of a journey rather than a destination. Which brings me to the next question I'd gotten, which was about how to maintain a consistent art style and whether or not it's important to do so. This is something that I used to wrestle with as well, and especially because I'm someone who works with different mediums, it often results in my pieces having varying looks. But I have now come to the conclusion that there isn't anything wrong with having quote unquote inconsistency, and to be honest, it may not be as varying as you think. Plus, I think that the notion of maintaining the exact same look and feel in all of your work hinders you from exploring and growing as an artist. In my opinion, I think it's better to allow yourself room to experiment rather than box yourself into a specific thing. And continuing on with the topic of consistency, another commenter had mentioned that they work in multiple vastly different styles and had some doubts if they should just pick one or the other. And I would say if you're an aspiring animator or illustrator for books or magazines, I think that having a wide array of styles is actually very beneficial because it shows art directors and clients that you're versatile and that you can be flexible to fit their needs for their project. Because the thing about working in that industry is you'll be hired to bring somebody else's story or vision to life, and you'll be working with a team of other artists. So if you have multiple ways of approaching art displayed in your portfolio, that might actually increase your chances of getting work for different projects. So if you want to try a new medium, different subjects, unusual color palettes, whatever it is, you should just go for it. And if you're worried about going outside of your box in fear of failing, I think a good way to take the pressure off is to get in the mindset of not feeling obligated to show anyone your experimented artworks. If you try something new and you don't think it's very good, you can just keep it to yourself and try again. You don't have to feel like, oh, I made this piece of garbage and now I'm gonna have to show somebody. You can just make these mistakes on your own and no one has to know about it. And if you're lucky, sometimes those experiments will turn out good and other people will like it too. Now, that being said, something that was also mentioned was if my art style is inconsistent, my original characters will look different every time. Now, I don't claim to be an expert by any means, but I think it might be more important to focus on creating distinct features in the character's overall design as opposed to the style of your art. So, for example, think about fan art. People have been creating fan art of their favorite characters for ages. And even though it'll be in a completely different style from one artist to the next, things about the character's character design will make them recognizable regardless. Like Sailor Moon. No matter what artist is drawing her, if you see that long blonde hair with the space buns, chances are you'll immediately recognize her. Even comparing the art styles from the manga versus the 90s anime versus the new anime, they're actually quite different from each other, but the characters are still distinguishable because of their distinct character designs. And while we're on the topic of anime, the next set of questions I got was about translating different ethnicities into a style that reflected their anime influences without directly copying another artist. And additionally, they also mentioned that during art classes in school, they didn't feel like they had the opportunity to explore and learn how to draw different ethnicities. As an Asian person who is born and raised in Canada, I can definitely relate to this. Similarly, in high school art classes, we mainly focused on European art history. And then during college, whenever I attended life drawing classes, the models were all Caucasian. So what I ended up doing, and still do, is use photographs for reference, practicing on my own time. I actually remember my first realism portrait that I did in high school was a pencil drawing of Rihanna that I had pulled out of a magazine. So my advice would be to take the techniques and skills that you were taught in school and apply them to photo references that you seek out yourself. You can even do like self-portraits from a mirror or have friends and family as references. But, the beauty of the internet is that there's millions of photographs that you can use to practice from. And then after building those drawing skills from those real life photos, you can begin to translate it into a more stylized version that feels unique to you and encompasses your other influences. Of course, you can always look to other artists to see how they simplify certain features, and referring back to the question about not wanting to directly copy another artist, what I would suggest is that you study from multiple different artists rather than just one. So the commenter had mentioned that they wanted to get a better understanding of depicting their own Black characters in a style that was anime adjacent, if you will. So using that as an example for this mini exercise, I have compiled a small selection of samples of different animated series, not necessarily just anime, so that we could take a look at how they depict some of their characters of color. First that came to mind for me was the anime series Michiko to Hatchin. Then we got Boondocks and My Hero Academia, and lastly Steven Universe. So after collecting different points of references, you can study and learn how this character's hair is drawn, or how this character's face is shaded, and how this artist draws each feature, etc., and so on. That way you can build a sort of library of knowledge that stems from multiple different artists rather than just one, and then from there it can be translated into something that's your own, or at least steer you in the direction that you want to go. And obviously, there's not only one way of depicting a person, no matter their ethnicity, or drawing a face, but I think that using as many different references as you can, and with lots of practice, that's how you build your knowledge and how you develop your art style. And that pretty much applies to learning how to draw anything, really. And that carries over to the next few questions I got, which was, how has my own style evolved over time? Was it due to being inspired by other artists, or was it a natural thing? And then what inspires me to draw my characters, and how long did it take me to find my art style? So as I mentioned earlier, I don't think I'll ever arrive at an art style and think to myself, this is it, I made it, and I have nowhere else to go. But I do believe that I will keep changing. I'll always be striving to be better. So naturally, as my interests change and my skills improve, the way that I illustrate gradually changes with it. I could probably make an entire video dedicated to showing you guys how my art has evolved over the years. Let me know in the comments if you want to see that. But the short version would be that back when I was really diving into drawing, which was in my preteens and high school, I was very heavily influenced by anime and manga. A lot of the times when I was creating fan art, it was just mimicking the style of whatever series I was making fan art for. Like, look at this iconic crossover that I did back in 2006. Can we just shout out to Inuyasha and Naruto? But yeah, so over time, when I started to branch out into creating my own characters, I began to meld all these different styles that I was mimicking into one. Like I had said earlier, I was also practicing my realism as well and experimenting with different mediums, like this super angsty Paramore watercolor painting I did. I think this was actually my first watercolor painting, but could be wrong. Anyway. Then, as I got older, my art influences came from more avenues than just anime, such as you saw with the Paramore fan art. I also drew influences from books, film, pinup, mythology, fashion, the list goes on. And all the while, I was always experimenting with different mediums and approaches. But ultimately, I'm now at a place where I'm focusing less on style and more about executing the ideas that I want to see come to life. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but that's where I'm at. So to put an exact timeline on how long it took me to find my style, I started consistently drawing when I was about 12, and I'm 28 now, which means it has taken me 16 years to make the work that I currently make, which is also probably how long some of you have been alive for, which makes me feel really old. But also bearing in mind, during those 16 years, the amount of time I spent drawing fluctuated a lot. During that time, I went to college for graphic design, and then the years after that I had graduated, I didn't know what direction I wanted to go in, so I was kind of all over the place in terms of how much I was drawing. And it's only been the last handful of years where I've really kind of dedicated a lot of my time, most of my time really, to pushing myself to make this art career happen. I currently still work a day job, but never in my life, I feel like, have I been more motivated in this art journey. And I really, really hope that someday soon I can be a full-time creator and keep showing you guys my journey. So ultimately, the takeaway I want you to have from this video is to not rush the process. Just keep making art that inspires you, and naturally your style will shine through, even if you may not see it yourself. And that pretty much brings us to the end of the video. I hope that this answered some of your questions about discovering your art style, and if you'd like to see more videos around this topic or an in-depth video about my art journey, let me know in the comments. And additionally, in my next video, I'm hoping to finally do a real-time sketchbook session. Yes, I will include footage of me sketching. So leave me some questions that you'd like me to answer in that video. I think it might be fun to do kind of like a Q&A. It can be art related, pop culture, personal, whatever comes to mind. Thank you so much for your support. I hope to see you next time.